You think you have an attention problem. You don't. You have a slavery problem. And the worst part is, you built the chains yourself. Every time you picked up your phone without thinking, every time you opened an app you didn't decide to open, every time you felt that itch, that hollow, crawling need for something, anything, and you fed it. That wasn't you living. That was something else running a program inside you. Most people believe they make choices. They believe they scroll because they want to. They believe they check their phone because they're curious. They believe they watch one more video because they enjoy it. None of that is true. What's actually happening is simpler and far more disturbing. Your brain is a reward machine, and something outside of you has learned to operate it better than you can. Dopamine is not your friend. Dopamine is a signal. It exists to push you toward survival behaviors: food, danger, reproduction, connection. It was built for a world of scarcity. You live in a world of infinite manufactured reward, and nobody warned you what that would do to the machinery. Every notification is a lever pull. Every short video is a lever pull. Every like, every alert, every new piece of content, lever pull, lever pull, lever pull. And you sit there like a rat in a box, pressing the lever over and over, wondering why you feel empty. The researchers who discovered this in rats called it compulsive reward seeking. The engineers who built your apps call it engagement. They are describing the same behavior. Here is what nobody says out loud. The people who design the systems you use every day studied addiction science, not to help you, to use it. They engineered your brain's reward circuitry into a product. You are not the customer. You are the supply, and you handed yourself over completely. Think about what your morning looks like before you speak, before you think, before your eyes have adjusted to the light. You reach for the phone. That is not a choice. That is a conditioned reflex, a rat pressing the lever. The only difference is the rat didn't choose to get into the box. Now here is where it gets worse. Consider what you used to be capable of. There was a version of you that could read for 2 hours without moving. A version that could sit with a problem until it cracked open. A version that could be bored without it feeling like emergency. That version did not disappear because you aged. It disappeared because you trained it out of existence. You replaced depth with speed. You replaced presence with stimulation. And you did it so gradually, in such small daily surrenders, that you never noticed the subtraction. Now you sit down to do something hard, something that matters. And within 60 seconds, your brain starts to scream. Not from pain, from withdrawal. From the absence of the signal it has been receiving 100 times a day, every day, for years. And most people hear that scream and think it means something is wrong with the task. It doesn't. It means something is wrong with the brain. Your brain. And you built it this way. Most people believe the damage from this is about focus. They think the problem is that they can't concentrate. They think the problem is productivity. They are wrong. The problem is not what you can't do at your desk. The problem is what you are becoming. Dopamine addiction does not just destroy attention, it destroys the self. Here is the mechanism. When the brain receives constant high stimulation reward, it adjusts. It downregulates. It pulls back its sensitivity to compensate for the flood. What that means in practice is that the baseline, ordinary life, ordinary moments, ordinary thinking, starts to feel unbearable. Not boring, unbearable. Your own mind becomes a place you cannot stand to be in. Silence becomes painful. Stillness becomes panic. A conversation without stimulation feels like deprivation. Being alone with your thoughts, something humans did for thousands of years, starts to feel like punishment. And so you reach for the lever, again and again and again. There is a term in behavioral science called ego depletion. The idea is that self-control draws from a limited resource. The more decisions you make, the more impulses you resist, the harder the next act of discipline becomes. Now think about what constant stimulation does to that resource. Your brain is spending energy all day long just processing the flood. Processing, reacting, craving, seeking. By the time you sit down to do something that actually requires you, there is almost nothing left. The tank is dry, not because you worked hard, because you were endlessly stimulated. There is a difference between being tired from effort and being depleted from consumption. Effort tiredness has dignity. You built something. You spent yourself on something real. Consumption depletion is just hollow. You consumed all day and have nothing to show for it, and you feel worse than when you started. Most people know that feeling. They feel it every night. That ambient guilt. That sense of time gone without purpose. That specific dissatisfaction that has no clean name. They medicate it by consuming more. And the spiral tightens. Watch how people behave in public now. Watch what happens when someone has to wait 5 minutes for anything. Not an hour. Not a day. 5 minutes. The phone comes out before the thought is even conscious. The hand moves before the mind decides. This is not impatience. This is withdrawal. You are watching an entire civilization in a low-grade state of drug withdrawal every time stimulation is removed, and they have no idea. But the attention loss is only the surface. Go deeper. Discipline requires the ability to act against immediate desire. Patience requires the ability to sit with discomfort without fleeing. Ambition requires the ability to delay reward across months and years. Resilience requires the ability to tolerate failure without immediate relief. A mind soaked in constant dopamine reward loses all of these. Not slowly, systematically. One small surrender at a time. Every time you reach for the phone, instead of sitting with boredom, you train yourself to flee discomfort. Every time you switch to entertainment instead of finishing something hard, you train yourself to abandon effort. Every time you seek stimulation instead of silence, you train yourself that the inside of your own head is somewhere you cannot go. This is not metaphor. This is neurological conditioning. You are training yourself every day to become weaker. And the system profiting from your weakness does not want you to stop. Think about what a population of dopamine-addicted minds looks like at scale. Shortened attention, emotional volatility, inability to plan long-term, craving for constant novelty, susceptibility to outrage, fear, tribal conflict. All of these make people easier to move, easier to sell to, easier to distract, easier to control. A disciplined mind is dangerous to systems that profit from weakness. A mind that can sit in silence, think clearly, delay gratification, and work without reward, that mind is nearly impossible to manipulate. That is not an accident. The most controlled, manageable version of you is the one scrolling at 2 in the morning, feeling hollow, reaching for one more hit. Now compare two people. The first person cannot sit still for 3 minutes without stimulation. They check their phone 40 times before noon. They abandon tasks the moment they become tedious. Their inner world is a place of noise. They have started many things. They have finished almost none of them. They feel vaguely purposeless but cannot identify why. They mistake being busy for being alive. The second person can sit in silence for an hour without discomfort. They finish what they start. They can tolerate repetition, tedium, the long middle section of every meaningful project where nothing feels exciting. They do not need constant confirmation. They do not need the lever. The difference between those two people is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not discipline in some abstract motivational sense. It is simply this. One of them has let their brain be colonized. The other has not. Now here is the part you have been waiting for without knowing it. Meaningful things take a long time to build. Not a motivational poster amount of time. Real time. Months of work before anything visible exists. Years before mastery. Decades before legacy. Every meaningful thing requires an extended period of boredom, repetition, and absence of reward. The novel requires thousands of hours of writing without applause. The business requires years of building before it sustains itself. The body requires months of training before the mirror changes. The skill requires practice long past the point where practice feels interesting. A brain trained on constant dopamine reward cannot survive this. It will not survive this. Not because it is weak in some general sense, but because it has been specifically, precisely trained to abandon effort the moment reward disappears. You have been conditioned to quit at the exact moment where everything real begins. That is the trap. That is the hidden design. The stimulation is infinite. The meaningful is slow. And you have been taught, at the neurological level, to choose infinite stimulation over slow meaning, every single time. So what are you actually looking at when you look at your life? You are looking at the output of a brain that has been trained against itself, against patience, against depth, against the kind of sustained, unrewarded effort that produces anything worth having. You have been optimized for consumption. You have been made into a perfect audience. And somewhere behind the scrolling and the watching and the endless passive intake, there is a version of you that was supposed to build something. That version is still in there. But here is the thing about silenced potential. It doesn't wait forever. It doesn't hold a candle in the dark while you scroll. It atrophies. It diminishes. The window where you could have done the hard thing closes, and not with a bang, but with a quiet biological surrender. The capacity to endure, to create, to sustain effort. These are skills like any other. Use them or lose them. You are choosing right now, every single day, which version of yourself to reinforce. And almost nobody chooses consciously. That is the cruelest part of this. The erosion is too slow to feel like a decision. You never sat down and said, I am going to sacrifice my depth for this. I am going to trade my capacity for meaningful work for endless stimulation. I am going to become shallower every year until I cannot recognize the person I was going to be. Nobody says that. It happens anyway. One tab at a time, one notification at a time, one small, invisible surrender at a time. That version of you is still in there, quieter now, harder to hear under the noise, but you are going to reach for your phone again before this video ends. And the machine is going to reward you for it, and you are going to feel for a moment like you chose to do that. You didn't.